Hi, I'm Josh Rushing, sitting in for Lisa Fletcher, and you are in the stream. Today, what have young Iraqis achieved in the last decade, and how are they shaping their country's future? Our digital producer, Malika Bilal, is back and looking out for your live feedback. Hey, Malika. So it's 10 years since the fall of Saddam, 10 years since the U.S. invasion in Iraq, and I'm so happy that we're actually using today's show to look at some of the positives and the futures. What's our community saying?
Me too. I'm really excited about today's show. So we're looking at the upcoming generation. And before we do that, this weekend, we received submissions through the USAID offices in Iraq from a number of people who participated in a youth leadership program. And we put together a few of their thoughts. We've subtitled it, so take a look.
اللي يتنفذ بالعراق هو كله شباب، كله شباب كمهندس كفني كعامل كدكتور كممرض كل هذا تنفيذه شباب. فاحنا العراق حاليا شعب شاب.
يعني الشباب وبعد أن ترسخ مبدأ أنني شاب وأريد أن أعمل في بلدي وأطوره.
إذا أردت أن تبني بلدا قويا ومزدهرا عليك الاعتناء بالشباب وتطوير واستثمار مهاراتهم لكي يمثلونك خير تمثيل في المستقبل.
بالرغم من اختلاف اللغة وبالرغم من كثير من الاختلافات التي كانت موجودة بينهم، استطاعوا التواصل مع بعض بمختلف الطرق حتى لو كانت بالإيماءات والإشارات.
And of course, we want to hear from you as well. So let us know your hopes for the future of Iraq using the hashtag AJStream.
To Malika's right is Hamada Zahawi. He's the co-organizer of TEDx Baghdad, a technology and innovation conference that promotes Iraqi innovators and connects domestic talent with those in the diaspora. Hamada, welcome to the stream.
Thank you.
Great. All right, look, joining us via Google Plus Hangout are a number of other Iraqis working both in the country and abroad. They'll be sharing their ideas and experiences shortly. And of course, you too can be in future Hangouts as well. Just go to the link below and add us to your circles.
My name is Mariam Wissam. I'm Iraqi. I live in Dubai. I'm a writer, I'm a researcher, and I'm in this stream.
The U.S.-led invasion of Iraq is now a decade old. Take a look at some of the headline-making events from the last 10 years.
Here we go.
They have to get down their stomachs and to crawl on the floor. The specialist grainer was shouting, "That's not good enough. Go down far enough."
A female suicide bomber attacked a tent filled with women and children.
This marks the end of a year-long mission in Iraq for our brigade, and also represents the end of 7 years of war in Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Hundreds of thousands of people in Sunni provinces have been protesting for almost 2 weeks.
It's hard to believe it's actually been 10 years. Now, despite the ups and downs and the struggles for a new beginning, there's plenty of hope in Iraq. Take a listen to Bilal Ghalib.
1,000 years ago, Baghdad was a hub of science, technology, art, and philosophy, and it can be that again. There are many people in Iraq right now trying to create a future that they can be proud of. The challenges that Iraq faces are vast, but the solutions to those challenges are already inside the country. We're trying to share the tools and the communities that can help people connect the dot from problem to solution.
All right, that's exactly what we're talking about. We're going to hear more from Bilal in just a little bit. We have him on the phone. But for the last 10 years, you've been bombarded with imagery from Baghdad of nothing but conflict and strife, like we saw earlier. But that's an incomplete picture. Some have said it'll take an entire generation to fix the problems across Iraq. So today, we're actually focusing on that next generation. This is a side of Iraq that's missed by mainstream headlines. Young, smart Iraqis who care more about innovating the future than about revenge and repeating a cycle of violence from the past. In this episode, we ask, what have young Iraqis already achieved in the last 10 years? And what are their hopes moving forward? To help us answer these questions, we're joined via Skype by Ahmed Habib, editor of shakumaku.net. It's an online magazine about everything Iraqi, arts, culture, politics, and sports. Also with us over the phone is Bilal Ghalib, who we heard from earlier. He's the co-founder of GIMSI, an organization that works to develop entrepreneurship in the Middle East and North Africa. Last year, they opened a hackerspace in Baghdad. Ahmed, Bilal, welcome to the stream. Great to have you both. Hamada, I want to start with you. So even despite all the struggles in Iraq, you're looking at a population where you got about 70% of the population is 30 years old or younger. And according to a recent government survey, the majority of them would consider themselves optimistic about the future of the country. What's going on there?
I think in what the Iraqis are seeing, and the younger Iraqis, is that they're getting I'm gleaning some good information and a lot of experiences from other people under the age of 30 around the Middle East. And I think there's definitely a galvanizing force within them that they see that the future really lies with the younger Iraqis, who will eventually aspire to academic positions in entrepreneurship, positions in government, positions in business. And I think that's where the hope lies.
And you were part of organizing TEDx. Can you tell us just a little bit about what TEDx is, how many times it's been done, and what's going on with that?
TEDx, I couldn't tell you exactly where the first one started, but I'd say probably around like 2008, 2009. And the idea was that the TED series themselves, Technology, Entertainment, Design, was an initiative to try to spread ideas or ideas worth spreading. And it was unfortunately prohibitive because it costs a lot of money. There's only a limited amount of seats. It happened in Long Beach and I believe somewhere else globally. TEDx was an idea, an independent entity to try to allow people in different continents, countries, universities, communities to be able to have their greatest thinkers, movers, shakers, innovators to try to have ideas worth spreading. The initial inception, the genesis of TEDx Baghdad started with a gentleman by the name of Yahya who was based in Amsterdam and in Holland, and he saw what they were able to achieve in Holland by doing one of the TEDx's there and had a dream of doing one in Baghdad. And so in 2010, 2011, he started the idea, was able to win the rights to have a TEDx in Baghdad and started to bring together the diaspora, certain communities, whether it was in Boston, California, Australia, Dubai, Holland, Iraqis all over the world, to try to come together and organize the event.
Speaking of Boston, we actually have someone. We're joined by Layla Shakely, who is in Boston right now, and you're also a part of TEDx. Layla, are you there?
I am indeed. I'm one of the first organizers of the TEDx initiative in Baghdad.
Yeah, so tell me about that first TEDx. How was that received in Baghdad?
Oh goodness. Well, first of all, I got a call randomly one day in February, 2 years ago exactly, and it was this man Yahya, and he told me, I've heard about you. I hear that you have crazy ideas and you're willing to implement them, and I want to have a TEDx conference in Baghdad. I said, you came to the right girl, let's do this. So we hit the ground running. People indeed thought we were crazy. We had no idea if it was going to go well or not. We realized that Iraqis are not to be underestimated. It went unbelievably well, and Iraqis just took it in their own hands and really, really made this such a successful initiative. So it's been really fun.
Well, speaking of taking it in their own hands, there's a question directly for you, Hamada. This is from Khalid, who says, what role do Iraqi American youth have when empowering the youth in Iraq? And of course, TEDx is about bringing the Iraqis in the diaspora with Iraqis in Iraq. So how do you foster that connection?
Well, I mean, I think Bilal's a great example of somebody who's done that. I had met with Bilal about 2 years ago at the end of TEDx Baghdad, who I think was very happy with the outcome of that event. He came to me and was asking me questions about how he can get involved in Iraq and so forth, and I didn't even have to give him the direction. He knew kind of where to go. He took his talents to Iraq to start this hackerspace and really kind of galvanize the young youth in Iraq.
Well, let's pull Bilal in then. Bilal, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I am.
So tell me, what is Hackerspace Baghdad? Tell us about that.
Okay, well, so TEDx is actually a pretty important part of the puzzle. For 20 years, since I was 7 years old, I was told that going to Iraq was a suicide mission, and basically I would be an idiot if I were to go. Once I saw the fact that there was a TEDx in Baghdad, I knew that there were going to be optimistic people. I've seen them all over. I've seen them in Cambridge. I've seen them in Cairo. TEDx gathers the people that are like, you know what, things can be different. There are people amongst us that are amazing and have wonderful things to share. And so I knew I could jump in. I called up Yahya, and then within weeks I was in Baghdad for the first time in 20 years, and I was able to share some of the things that I've been learning through my experiences with hackerspaces at MIT and in San Francisco and in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I was finally able to share them with my home country for this.
So so you went from TEDx and you actually started a Kickstarter campaign. You were asking for $27,000 so that you could start a hackerspace in Baghdad. I know you got more than that. You got like $29,000 and change. Tell us what a hackerspace is, and tell us what the one in Baghdad is doing.
Okay, so a hackerspace, if you can imagine it, is a collaborative community space. It's 20 people who say, you know what, I care about you and I want to support your ideas, and we each have a small part of a much larger idea. I might know how to do some awesome graphic design, and you know how to do some screen printing, and somebody else knows how to set up a server. Individually, we know one thing. Together, we can start something amazing. And so the idea is that through a grassroots effort where everyone pitches in part of the rent, part of the tools, and most importantly, their care for each other and supporting the creation of this environment, a lot of great possibilities can bubble up in the grassroots. So we raised enough money to bring a team out to Baghdad and participate in TEDx Baghdad, but also we ran what we call a pop-up hackerspace, which is where we show people what it's like to have that kind of community around you. And we did it for 10 days at a place called YDI, and we just put out the call. Said, anybody have anything they want to share? We had somebody do an origami workshop, because he's like, you know what? I care about origami. I know origami, and I'm going to teach something. And then somebody else was like, I care about Google Maps, and I want to bring Google to Iraq by making a demonstration of like an amazing Google Maps application. And this is Jabor Khairi. He went out and he Google mapped his entire city, and Google actually reached out to him. And he took us to Azdorat Park, and we did 360 panoramas. So what we did was we used social media, we used the internet, and we used our on-the-ground presence to go and discover amazing people, bring them together, and then step back and say, you guys are a community. What can you do? And since then, many, many amazing things have happened. And Mujtaba is on the line. I think he's on.
Exactly, Bilal. And some of the amazing things that have happened because Mujtaba has picked up the work that you did. So Mujtaba Al-Tamimi, you're a member of the Baghdad Hackerspace. Now, we just heard what it was, and on my screen, I pulled up jamsi.org, which is where Bilal, the site where Bilal explains it all. But Mujtaba, I know that it went from 60 people to recently you had 40 people show up at one workshop. What do you think is behind that motivation that people are now really interested in this?
The thing about the hackerspace is that when I tell people about the idea, I see that they're so excited about it. There are a lot of people here in Baghdad and have a lot of information, and they just want to share it. They want to share it with everyone, because when they go and talk about it with their friends, nobody's going to care about it. That's one of the things that are not really available here in the Baghdad. People don't really have moral support, and that's why they come to the hackerspace. I've heard one of my friends at the hackerspace say that when I started coming to this hackerspace,
I'm kind of lost Mujtaba there, but
one of my friends said when I come to the hackerspace, I see that people are encouraging me. I'm so happy that there are people encouraging me now and he never had people encouraging him before. And that's actually the case with me too. I've been programming ever since I was little, and nobody ever really cared until now when I talk to people at the hackerspace about me programming and working on making apps for mobile for Android and stuff like that. People are so excited and they say, "Oh, cool! We want to learn. We want to hear all about it."
So, Mujtaba, you're there doing this in Baghdad, but part of this movement is also Iraqis who are in the diaspora. So I want to ask Sundus, who's up in Montreal. Sundus, I know that you're an artist. Can you tell us a little bit about your project?
For sure. I mean, I've been working as a multimedia artist for about over 10 years now, and my main goal was always to try to maintain a link between my presence here in the diaspora in Canada and my identity and my roots in Iraq. So I did that for a long time through my artwork, through subject matter, through the content. I used to go to Iraq also as much as I could and collect materials, especially for orchestra. I actually ended up doing a sound component of it where I went and I collected field recordings from Baghdad. So that was a huge part of, Iraq was a huge part of my work. And then as I grew older and my work started evolving, teaching also became an amazing tool to try to maintain that link between where I am and what I do as an artist here in the West and my people in Iraq. So one of the organizations that really facilitated that I collaborated with, participated with, is Sada, or ECHO, Sada Iraq. It was founded by Regine Sahakian. She's an amazing person. And the whole concept behind it is to build a bridge between practicing Iraqi artists in the diaspora and Iraqi artists that are in Baghdad and in Iraq, and creating that link and trying to break the isolation between trying to break the isolation that Iraqi artists face in Iraq, for many years with the sanctions.
Well, Sundus, in building that bridge and that link, I want to know what role that the internet plays in all of this, because I know that you've worked, specifically your artwork you've turned to YouTube, you've done work online. So what role is the internet playing in this?
A huge role. I mean, it's facilitated so much for not just the multimedia arts, but really in Iraqi social life. The social fabric has completely changed. The sanctions had completely isolated Iraq for 10 years, and the occupation could have isolated it even more had the youth not really stepped up and started to use the internet to start communicating with the outside world, quote unquote. The internet cafes started popping up as early as 2002, whereas before that there was no internet in Baghdad. They had, just the main TV channels that were Ba'ath, the Ba'ath doctrine.
And so just not to interrupt you, but as you're speaking, I've just pulled up on my screen your page, your blog site, so that people can see some of the artwork that you've been working on.
Yeah, this is a recent collaboration with Shakumaku. I know you're going to talk to Ahmed Habib. He's also done an amazing job in just trying to maintain that link between Iraqis in the West and Iraqis outside of Iraq and those inside, because there can be such a huge gap, but the link is always there, not just in our roots, but in a hope for a better future. And I know that's what this show is, after all, trying to promote, is that the youth have a positive vision for what's coming up, trying to break from the molds.
Hey, Hamad, I see you trying to jump into the conversation here. What did you want to add onto that?
I think exactly like Sundus was saying, we have to picture in the way that the best way I can envision it when people ask about the youth and so forth is the world went in an exponential growth when it came to technological interconnection between 1990 and to the present. Iraq from 1990 to about 2003 really was in the dark. And so what you're realizing is the Iraqi youth are jumping leaps and bounds, trying to catch up with the rest of the world, trying to plug into the to the Twitters and the LinkedIns, trying to bring up these hacker spaces and so forth. What's incredibly commendable is that they're trying to do it within the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and that is something that people have to be mindful of as entrepreneurship grows, as the youth rise up in Iraq to really kind of take hold of how to kind of engage themselves and be a part of the rebuilding effort of Iraq.
That makes a lot of sense.
Well, Roida, I want to go to you because I know that you're doing something that's the opposite of something we've been reading about. We read about brain drain, but you recently moved back to Kurdistan. Tell us about why you did that.
Thanks for having me on the stream. It's great to share a platform with so many amazing young people. The reason why I moved back to Kurdistan is because I believe right now it provides a platform for young people who want to make significant change. I used to live in London. When I'm in London, I feel like the sort of types of changes that I can enforce are very superficial, whereas in Kurdistan, I can see the changes I'm making in people's lives. So the shift from one country to another is quite great, but believe me, the changes I am seeing on a daily basis is worth returning. In Kurdistan, we're quite different from the Arab regions. We've been doing sort of work with youth for a long time. Some of the things that we're seeing on university campuses are amazing. For instance, at the American University, we recently had a Soleimani forum where we had politicians speak, and that was organized by students. We have several newspapers led by students, and they're in English. We have the University of Kurdistan, where students sort of form groups together, and they go to the local orphanage and they tutor them on a volunteer basis. In 2012, we took a large group of orphans inside an airplane for the first time in their life. Just the look on their faces was amazing. And some other things we've been doing, I could go on and on.
Oh, no, I bet that's amazing. But I want to bring in Ahmed Habib. He's the editor of Shakumaku. Ahmed, are you there? I know you're trying to capture this whole movement on your website, so I want to give you kind of a two-part question here. One, give us a reality check. I mean, we're being pretty positive on this show. We're looking at innovation coming out of Iraq and the youth, but is that the reality there, or are the security concerns overwhelming? Is there too much sectarian strife? And then tell us about Shaku Maku and the kind of success you've had with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit disappointing that we're quoting a report from the government of Iraq and then speaking about TEDx, and although it's a great initiative, but nonetheless, it's not an initiative that has much resonance with the people of Iraq. To try to describe that there's this euphoria of optimism that's sweeping the youth of Iraq. That's absolutely not the case. The people of Iraq are living in a situation where they're dealing with a crumbling infrastructure. There's no education, there's no health care, there's absolutely no safety. The country is always teetering on the brink of civil war. The government is a case study in corruption and violence, and I think although it's important to commend all of the guests that are really working hard to try to put things that are in motion in communities to try to build positive spaces, but I think it's also important for the viewer to understand that this is not Pinocchio and everything in Iraq is not fine. Everything in Iraq is actually very bad. The last 10 years have proven to be a decade of theft, a decade of sectarian imposed violence, and I think it's really important for us to really hold those parties that have been responsible for these kinds of actions accountable, primarily for our viewers in the West who are living in the United States and in the UK, to confront those forces that have been instrumental in politically organizing the destruction of Iraq. Having that said, yes, the people of Iraq are resilient. Of course, the Iraqi youth are resilient. They've been through decades of war and dictatorship and sanctions, and of course they're going to rise up and build their own communities on their own terms. But we must be certain that in order for us to show solidarity with the people of Iraq, that we do not jump into a celebratory phase where we think that everything is fine in Iraq. And I think that's what we wanted to do with shakumaku.net, is strike that balance between showing initiatives and accomplishments of Iraqi youth like Sundus outside of Iraq and others who have been doing great work in their own communities, but at the same time put out a dummies guide to people who do think that the situation in Iraq is over, people who do think that the occupation is over.
So, Ahmed, you've painted a pretty grim picture of the last 10 years. Tell me, what do you see happening in the next 10 years?
I think the future of Iraq is going to be reliant both on the ability of its people to take control of the decision-making process, for them to hold accountable their government, which has been an example of theft and corruption and violence. Much of the talk about democracy in Iraq is nothing more than a public relations exercise. So I think that the youth of Iraq are going to play a critical role in sort of kicking away these misconceptions and building a future for them. We see
Bilal, I want to get your thoughts on what Ahmed's saying, because it's resonating with our community. Tweets here all talking about sectarianism and rising above it, daring to dream of a better Iraq. Another tweet from Fatima who says Iraq is still reconstructing itself after a decade of war. We have about 30 seconds, Bilal, but I want your thoughts on that.
Exactly. A lot of people have been talking about my irrational optimism, and I'm really, really happy for the media attention. I think there need to be stories of people like me and like the rest of this group that are attempting to break that wall that has isolated Iraq from the rest of the world and from the rest of their international family. And it is dangerous. I was there for 10 days, and there were 3 car bombings, and they blew up the guards to my own neighborhood. But
hey, Bilal, I hate to stop you on a note talking about car bombings, but I have to, because we're going to lose our audience on live TV. So what I need you to do, if you're watching this on TV, go to your computer, go to stream.aljazeera.com, because this conversation is going to continue there. And until then, we'll see you online. All right, welcome back to the online post show. It's the fastest 20 minutes of my life whenever I come here to host the stream, and we just lost the end of the show there, went right off right in the middle of someone's thoughts. So I want to go back to Bilal, who was talking about while there are dangers in Iraq, there's also the need for optimism. I believe that was your point, Bilal?
Yeah. It's essential to have this optimistic attitude. And initially when people look at it, it seems idiotic. But that's the problem. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And we need to let people go, be very clear about the dangers, but show that it's possible to re-engage with this country and show the West, like the methods that people are willing to take and the risks that they're willing to take. And I think by demonstrating this possibility, by having TEDx there, I was able to go. And I'm hoping through my blogging and through my writing about the work that I'm doing there, other people are going to be able to see that and say, hey, you know what? That could be me. I could do that. I miss my family. I want to do something about this situation too, and I can help. And this reverse brain drain is only going to be resolved when we break that self-fulfilling prophecy of good, smart people not wanting to enter the country.
That's got to make you feel good, right? Because you got to think, if you just change one person, think about what they do, right? And
well, I mean, when it came back to the TEDx, I mean, a lot of us, when we initially came up with the idea, is that I didn't even think, the first time I ever went to Iraq was in 2011 for the TEDx. And when we all re-engaged and got the Iraqi diaspora and they decided to come into Iraq and kind of like, shed those ideas of security concerns and so forth. And yes, we were in the international zone, and yes, it is more secure than the rest of Baghdad. But let me put it in this perspective. When we got to the ground, the way it was successful wasn't the fact that we just had the Iraqi diaspora working on this. We were working with up to 200 volunteers in TEDx on the ground. So university students, people from all over Iraq were able to help us with the process. And when we were there, the key to remember was that the TEDx Baghdad was really kind of like beating all odds. But we refused, and the Iraqis on the ground refused to believe that we would be any different from a TEDx in California, or a TEDx in Dubai, or a TEDx in London. They strive for perfection. They work for perfection. That's what we were able to achieve in that first one.
Hey, Ahmed, jump in here.
I mean, with all respect, I have to kind of be sober and be a bit realistic about the kind of impact that an initiative like TEDx is going to have on the youth of Iraq. Although I think it's a great initiative that has a lot of impacts on many different communities, but I think that there are tremendous obstacles that are facing youth in the country, and there are different priorities that are facing youth in the country. I agree with the speaker, and I'm sorry I'm not good with names, that there needs to be a certain level of optimism, but there's a thin line between an optimism and then a public relations whitewashing of what's happening in the country, and then pretending that everything is okay. I don't.
Hey, but Ahmed, can I push back a little bit there? Can I push back? In the international media, have you not seen anything but coverage in the last 10 years of the conflict, of the politics, of the violence? It's not like that's getting undercovered. It's the only story that seems to come out of Iraq. So to have one show where you do look at the optimism, is there really a need to say that this is whitewashing?
The only story that's coming out of Iraq is that Sunnis are killing Shias, and that there's a process of reconstruction that's being hindered by terrorism. The story that's not coming out of Iraq is the resilience of the Iraqi people. So I'm not the one who's advocating for more negative coverage of Iraq. I'm advocating for positive coverage of Iraq, but positive coverage that takes into context that the kind of struggles and the kind of obstacles that people in Iraq are facing, and not for us to be part and parcel of a program in which the Iraqi government is definitely a supporter of. And that's why the only piece of evidence that we have of Iraqi youth optimism is a survey that was carried out by the Iraqi government, is for us not to pretend that everything in Iraq is fine. Yes, I do support initiatives like TEDx Baghdad. Yes, I do support the hackerspace. Of course, those are great initiatives that are bringing a sense of innovation and creativity inside Baghdad, inside Iraq. But it's important for us at the same time, when we discuss those initiatives, to be very clear of the tremendous obstacles: no electricity, no clean water, no healthcare, no education, and to look at those as priorities and look at how we can empower initiatives that are going to target and tackle those issues specifically.
Well, Sundus, I want to bring you in here because we just got a tweet from Reem El-Zahawi, who says, in recent years and during your travels to Iraq, what are some of the most inspiring stories you've come across? Now, I know, Sundus, you went back to Iraq in 2009, 2010 as part of a project that you're working on, an art project, but that also coincided with some of the biggest bombings that Iraq has seen. So I'd like your thoughts on that, and then your answer to this question about the inspiring stories that can come across.
Definitely, and I think this ties back into what Ahmed Habib was just saying. There is a balance. I mean, just taking a short trip that I took, I was there for 6 days in 2009, and I called it 5 days in heaven, 1 day in hell, because there was so much inspiring and there was so much resilience in the city. I spent 2 days at the Museum of Modern Art in Baghdad documenting amazing, unbelievable, pioneering artworks from the 20s and 30s in Iraqi history up until, you know, contemporary time. So there was so much great, inspiring stories around me, but then it just takes that one violent day to just rock your whole world and bring out all of the garbage and the corruption out into the open. And I think that's one thing that we have to be really, really aware of, and that's also, in my opinion, the role of the youth, is to start holding people responsible.
Hey, Ruwaida, I know you want to jump in here as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to go back on what Ahmed said, I think we're only looking at Iraq in the sense that it's only an area of Iraq. There is also Kurdistan, which is relatively safe. The only bombing that has ever taken place since the fall of Saddam Hussein was in 2004. Our areas are very safe. It's very secure. It provides opportunities for youth to make an impact both on a political and social level. So I think maybe we should not just look at Baghdad, but also look at other areas where, you know, I consider myself Kurdish, but I understand that North Iraq is part of, you know, Iraq. My point being, we are safe, and it's not whitewashing if we focus on the positive things happening in North Iraq, which is Kurdistan.
And Hamada, it's interesting that Ruwaida just said that, because we have a tweet that's directed to you. Jian says, question for Hamada, does optimism among young Iraqis differ by region or between Kurd, Shias and Sunni? I think that Ruwaida just slightly answered that, but I'd like your thoughts on it.
I think in two ways. I think I definitely voice concurrence with Ruwaida in the fact that the Kurdish North has had for the last, since 1990-91, they've had a no-fly zone, so they've had a chance to rebuild itself and reinvent itself. In that capacity, there's universities, the American University in Sulaimani and other institutions have been able to push forward and help the youth in all sorts of ways to engage with the population. I think in that way, because it's more secure, it has had a chance and is a good example for the rest of Iraq in some way to see and kind of follow suit.
But you can't wait for security to have innovation, otherwise it'll just never come around.
And
right?
go down to the axiom, what, you know, necessity is the mother of all innovation. And I think because of Iraq and what's happening in the southern part, in the middle of Iraq and so forth, that necessity is causing innovation. It's causing people to kind of come out there and try to make a difference. I'll give you a small example quickly. In terms of, as an inspirational story, one of the people that we had speak at TEDx was somebody who was a photographer. How did he become a photographer? He was on these kind of channels. He was on a forum. Somebody told him, you're from Iraq. Why would you be there? How come you haven't immigrated? And he said, I was so sick and tired of hearing the bad, negative stories of Iraq, I was going to go make a difference. He grabbed the camera, went to the streets, started taking photos. One of his photos won the competition National Geographic in Abu Dhabi. He was on TEDx in 2011. He was on the TEDx in 2012. What's the case in point is through these conflicts, through these bad times, you get stories of optimism that spawn other stories of optimism.
All right, look, I want to give our last word to Mujtaba. Are you still there? He's actually young, he's in Iraq, and I want to ask him a question. Are you there, Mujtaba?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. So you told me, you're young, you're in Iraq. What do you see as the future of Iraq? What's the next 10 years for you?
One of the great things that I see is that Iraqi students, well, I'm a college student, so most of the Iraqi students that I see in school are so enthusiastic, and they want to change Iraq. And I see that a lot of them are taking the initiative to make things. There are a lot of people who are starting. One of the great ideas right now to do at college is we are starting clubs at school. One of the clubs is like for community service, for tech students, for all that kind of stuff. And there has never been anything like that in Iraqi schools. So that's, and the great thing is that students are looking at other countries other than Iraq, and trying to bring those things into Iraq, into Iraqi schools, and into the Iraqi society.
Well, you got to find hope in that. I mean, we don't have to whitewash the fact that there are challenges, there is conflict, there are difficulties to be sure, but you've got to find hope in a guy like that in Baghdad and the future that's there. Now, on Tuesday's show in Bulgaria, calls to end poverty and corruption have actually led to the prime minister stepping down. But can Bulgaria's broken democracy be fixed? Send us your thoughts on that, and until then, we'll see you online.